Sci Access, May 11, 2024. Greetings from the South Pole. Kalvin Moschkau, Connor Duffy.
Okay, so there's a short delay.
Yeah, there might be a bit of a delay. But thank you for inviting us. This is the first time we're involved with Sci Access, and it's very exciting to be here. So we're going to give you a bit of an overview of IceCube, which is the neutrino observatory here at the South Pole, which both Kalvin and I work for. We're going to talk first about the detector itself, cover a small amount of science that we've done with IceCube, and then dive deep into what it's like to be here at the South Pole, what we do here in our day-to-day lives, and how we spend our time. So to start off, to introduce ourselves, my name is Connor. I have a PhD in gamma ray astrophysics, and I previously worked on the Cherenkov telescope array at the University of Oxford.
And my name's Kalvin Moschkau. I have a Master of Development Practice from the University of Minnesota. It's in basically international development, and a Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering and Computer Sciences from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So to kind of dive into the background of neutrino astrophysics, basically, and what neutrinos actually are. They're nearly massless, very tiny fundamental particles that travel very close to the speed of light. They are unaffected by the electromagnetic fields, and they only interact via weak interaction and gravity. Other than photons, they're the most common particles in the universe, and more than 1 trillion pass through your body every single second.
So in order to observe such small and non-interacting particles, we build this giant detector here at the South Pole. The detector itself is a 3D array of what we call digital optical modules. They're photosensors that look for Cherenkov radiation, which is produced when neutrinos interact with the ice. Currently below us, there are 5,484 of these detectors, and they sit anywhere from 1,450 meters below us in the ice to 2,450 meters. The construction itself of IceCube took 7 years, and it's really a huge detector. It's the largest detector here at the South Pole, and it covers almost all of what we call the dark sector, which is the sector outside the South Pole, which houses the astrophysical science projects. This slide here shows probably the largest advance we've made in science in the last couple of years. And for centuries, we've been able to observe our Milky Way with optical radiation, optical light, what you can see with your eyes. Secondly, we've shown what it looks like in high energy gamma rays. These are the highest energy radiation that we can observe. And then finally, what we expected to see with neutrinos through the predictions, our analysis expectations, and then finally what was observed with the neutrinos that we observed here at the South Pole. This is incredible because it's the first time that we've observed our Milky Way in something other than photons. So looking at the particles themselves rather than the light that's produced by the stars. And
our observed observations match quite closely to the analysis that we expected to see based on the statistical analysis that we did. Now we'll dive into a bit about getting to the South Pole and what life is like down here. The travel route goes through several stages. There's training in Madison originally in the United States in Wisconsin, and then there's further training in Denver where you get to meet other people that you'll be wintering over with, and basically getting to know those people and working together on some smaller projects. You then travel through Houston as a layover, and then to Christchurch, New Zealand, which is kind of the stop for all United States Antarctic Program participants. They travel from Christchurch, New Zealand to McMurdo, and then if you're working at the South Pole, to the South Pole.
So McMurdo is the largest research station on Antarctica. It is the largest American station, and it houses up to around 1,500 people during the summer. When Kalvin and I arrived, there was around 800. We arrived very early in the season, and we didn't really spend much time here in McMurdo. It's huge. There's a lot of buildings dedicated to science, a lot for cargo as the cargo moves through McMurdo onto the pole, and other stations such as the French and Italian stations. It is also home to Captain Scott's hut, and it was the hut that was built in 1912 to house Captain Scott and his men as they were trying to travel towards the South Pole.
So we'll dive into a bit about what a day in the life at the South Pole is. Talk a bit about the station, the accommodations, and daily routines of people who work here. We'll mention amenities and social life and other activities that people partake in, and then challenges and how to prepare for emergencies down here. The first kind of topic we'll talk about is going to work. The Ice Cube lab is over a mile from the South Pole station, the Emerson Scott station, and we commute there several times a week, just walking there and back. In the summer, it's light out for 24 hours a day. But in the winter, it's dark out for 24 hours a day. There's really only one kind of diurnal cycle that runs throughout the year. In this picture here, you can see the dark sector, as Connor mentioned earlier, which houses several telescopes in the Ice Cube lab. In the center are SPT, the South Pole Telescope, and BICEP, both of these telescopes looking at the cosmic microwave background radiation, and doing long-term research in this stable environment. What's very interesting about this picture is that basically across the entire horizon is where Ice Cube is deployed. There's flags on either side, and you can see how wide, over a kilometer wide, the detector really is.
Next up, we're showing the galley where we take our meals and spend time and hang out with our friends. The image shown shows quite a small number of tables and around seating for around 40 to 50 people at a time. This is set up for the winter, which we are now in, and at the minute there are only 41 of us here at the South Pole. During the summer we house up to around 160 people, so this room gets a lot busier and a lot more tables and chairs to house the rest of us. In the galley we get served meals 3 times a day. There's plenty of leftover food, and you can usually make your own food if the galley staff aren't busy making everybody else's. The next image just shows one of our dormitories. The dormitories are pretty standard. They're very small, but it's nice to have your own space. Other stations like McMurdo, you tend to have to share with at least one other person. It's not a bad room. It's a single bed with a desk, and we have plenty of room to sort of make it your own space and enjoy your time there.
And then we have down here also a library and a greenhouse. What's pretty cool about this library is that there is a pretty huge selection of books to read if you want to. What's pictured is only about 1/3 of what's available. And most of the books that are here were brought down by participants of the program. So only a smaller selection of Antarctic or South Pole specific books were purchased by the program, and those are, like checkout only. The rest is really just a selection of what people thought would be interesting to have during the summer and the winter. The greenhouse that we have is quite unique because we're the only station, the only US station on Antarctica that has a greenhouse. It is really a volunteer-run basis, and we get sometimes up to 25 pounds of like fresh lettuce and vegetables per week.
Both of these spaces do have a sort of socializing areas, and it's very nice to sort of spend time and hang out with people here and even read together. The greenhouse itself is it's one of 2 rooms on station where you can really get some humidity. The humidity down here is around 0% all the time. So it's nice to sort of relax in here and sort of soak up some of that humidity. Next up, we should talk about emergencies. So down here at the South Pole, there is no hospital, no emergency room, and only a small clinic with a single physician and a physician's assistant. We have enough fuel to last around a year. And what this means is that we really have to be self-sufficient. So everybody on station during the winter is part of an emergency response team. And we all sort of come together and try and learn so that we can support each other in case of an emergency.
And it's really important because from about March to October, there's no flights that come in or out of the South Pole. So I think in the past, there's only been 3 or 4 emergency medical evacuations in the history of this station.
And sorry, the reason they can't come in is because it's too cold to land a plane here. They will just either freeze to the floor or the engines will just not start.
And that kind of transitions into what it's like working outside in these conditions. These pictures were taken on the same day. One is pretty foggy. It looks like fog, but it's really just ice crystals in the air. And the other one is a clear blue sky during the summer. We do some work outside, but most of the time our work is inside the Ice Cube lab. When we are working outside or transitioning to the Ice Cube lab, we wear what's called ECW, or extreme cold weather gear. And that includes, face masks, goggles, hats, balaclavas, and then really thick synthetic down jackets and pants.
And currently, it is very dark outside right now. So we've been in the sunset almost 2 months ago now. So it's really very dark, which adds another level of complexity to our working outside.
And then lastly, how communication and the isolation works down here. The closest humans to us are actually in space on the International Space Station. They're about 200 miles overhead when they are overhead. But McMurdo, the closest United States Antarctic Program station, is about 1,200 miles away. We do have a post office during the summer season where you can receive packages and order things off Amazon. Might take a couple months to get there, but it usually arrives. But there are no deliveries throughout the winter. And all of our internet is communicated over satellite. We get about 15 hours a day.
So what might be important to mention now is how to become a polar scientist, or how to support science here at the South Pole or anywhere else on Antarctica, I suppose. So both myself and Kalvin have very different pathways into this, I suppose. I myself was working in research before, and I am a researcher. My background is very similar to how IceCube works. So it's something I heard of very early on in my career. And obviously the excitement of South Pole, I've wanted to come here for a long time. So it was an easy decision for me to apply.
And my background was originally in engineering, where I obtained some skills to be able to work on some of the equipment here. But I got a master's degree in international development, which provided the opportunity to work in some very diverse, challenging environments around the world. And this is kind of a skill that helps, is really helpful and important when you're working in environments that require a lot of independent work and leadership in challenging situations.
So we said before, there's 41 of us here currently. Only 10 of us are what people would call a scientist, in quotes. The rest are really what keeps the station running and keeps science possible. So they are the support staff that help fuel the power plant, run the power plant. They cook our meals, deal with cargo, and help with any vehicle requirements that we have. And really, without them, we obviously couldn't do the work that we do. So it's not just science that gets you working in science at the South Pole. There are a lot of other pathways that can feed into supporting us here.
And now we'll open things up to any questions and answers that people have about anything we've mentioned or anything you're curious about.
Thank you so much, Kalvin and Connor. That was so exciting. Gosh, so just to say it back to you, you said there are 41 people at the South Pole right now? Wow. So
yep, that's correct.
A large portion of the South Pole population is on this call. That's amazing. I think one of my other favorite things you said is that the closest humans to you are actually in space. I don't know how how many people who are not in space can say that sentence. So we do have. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying it's pretty isolating being here.
Yes. Which, I mean, it's kind of interesting, sort of analog to space in some ways too, it would feel. So we do have a few questions coming in from the attendees. Let me take a look here. Dr. Ashley Shu, who was actually a keynote speaker yesterday, says, as an amputee, I know some of my components are rated for particular temperatures. usually more worried about things getting too hot, and had the flexiliner inside one of my sockets warped by heat that ruined the leg at one point. Do you have any disabled folks with equipment impacted by the cold, or who would have to make plans for their stuff? Thinking here about insulin pumps, for instance.
Yeah, sure. So one thing to mention is it's actually rather difficult to be here if you are disabled, unfortunately. The program itself requires that we go through really strict medical testing, medical examinations. Obviously, some disabilities are more problematic for the program than others. But so I think right now there isn't any disabled people here, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, and the one thing, there are certainly people with diabetes here. Sorry, just got a call. And insulin pumps do work down here, certainly. They just usually have to be kind of packaged up if you're going to go outside and held underneath several layers of clothing because it can get pretty cold. One thing that's maybe smaller that people do have to worry about is if you have metal glasses, you can't wear those outside. Everyone usually has to use metal or plastic frames. Otherwise, within a few seconds, it'll get usually too cold.
Thank you. Next question I have is from Adrian, who says, what has surprised you about working at the South Pole?
Yeah, I think something that did surprise me, but it probably shouldn't have, is the diversity of backgrounds of people that are here. Really, you meet people that have worked all over the world, people in Finland and in across Asia and Africa. And just all the different types of work that they've done in their past is super fascinating to hear about. I've really enjoyed getting to kind of know some of those people and their stories.
I think for me, one thing that's always interesting to tell people is, and surprising, is how little you use your phone. I think in the modern world now, everybody's sort of glued to their mobile phones. Whereas here, because we don't have internet for the majority of our day whilst we're awake, is something you don't really think about anymore.
That's really interesting. We have another question from Chris talking about in the US, we had a beautiful display of the aurora borealis. Can you describe a bit what it's like viewing the skies from the South Pole and what your best experience of it is so far?
Yeah, of course. It's very interesting, actually. So during the summer, we have sort of 5 months of full sun, where you see nothing but sun and blue skies. So for me, what was fascinating was the first time that you can see a star. I remember we had just sauntered and gone onto the deck to cool down, and there was a star just staring directly at us. And it's sort of incredible after seeing nothing but sun for so long, to see this star sort of appear.
Yeah, and there are some really cool weather phenomena that you get down here that are much more common than other places in the world. One of them is like a moon halo or a moon dog, where you get a fraction of light around the moon and it creates a kind of a secondary halo. And that's something I'd never seen before. Sun dogs or sun halos are also pretty common down here in the summer when you get enough ice crystals in the air. But the one thing that surprised me the most is that the phases of the moon look like they travel in the opposite direction because you're at the south, at the bottom of the world.
Yeah.
And that I wasn't expecting that at all.
Wow, I wouldn't have
And
expected that either.
obviously we get lots of aurora, and thankfully now with this space weather event, we're having even more incredible shows.
Sci Access. Learn more at www.sciaccess.org.